I need to have this V12 Ferrari engine completely torn down by the end of the day. I need to see what's going on inside of this engine so we can start the process of ordering parts, getting custom things made. We only have 82 days before this engine needs to be in this car, completely done, running, shredding tires at the SEMA show. That is a huge undertaking in a very short amount of time. We need to get going on it right away. So the first step is to get this engine onto an engine stand. If you remember, we tried to save some money and buy the cheapest engine stand at Harbor Freight. That was a terrible idea and a complete waste of money because there's no way that that's gonna work. Then we bought the best engine stand that they had. That didn't work either. It was teeter-tottering on that stand. I need to make a custom adapter that's going to bolt onto the back of this engine and bolt onto that engine stand that's gonna hold it securely. So I'm gonna get started on that right away. First step is to measure the studs that are coming off the back of the engine. Get on the computer and draw them up in CAD and then create the sketch outline of what the plate's gonna look like. I've got the part all designed. I'm gonna send this file over to the plasma table and then we'll be able to cut it out. I got the part design file in the Jackran plasma table. We got a piece of 3/16 steel in there and we're gonna cut it out. So we should be good to go. That looks really good. Nice, clean cut. Just gonna sandwich this plate in between the engine and the engine stand. So I'm gonna make sure this fits. If it looks good, then I'm gonna cut another one out so I can sandwich two of them together and give it a little more stiffness. Yeah, overall, looks good. Make sure these will fit here. Those look good. All right, cut another one out. We'll get this thing bolted together. All right, so we got our plates cut out. So we've got two of them stacked together and bolt this thing up, get it onto the engine stand, and hopefully it'll be nice and solid and we can start tearing this thing apart. All right, we're gonna take the engine over to the 2-post lift, use some ratchet straps, strap it on, try to lift it up, and hopefully all will go our way. All right.
We are clear.
That looks pretty stable. We've got the two plates that we made sandwiched together. Let's see if it works. It is top heavy for sure right now with the heads on. Gonna go down. Let's see if it works. It's still a bit sketchy, but I think we're just gonna roll with it. Not really excited about it. It's three-wheeling. Well, that just means that we need to get the heads off as quickly as possible. This F12 build is absolutely insane. Roundup build, there's so much left to do on this car, but sometimes I just need to take a break and take my mind off of things. That's why I'm happy to say that today's sponsor is My Konami Slot Machines. Tim, pass me my chair, please. Sometimes it's good to just get off your feet for a minute and play some slots. Join millions of slot players and win big at My Konami Slots, the official Konami casino. Anytime you feel the need for a little casino fun or a quick win, My Konami features some of your favorite slot machines straight off the casino floor. Jump in Jalapenos, China Mystery, Lotus Land, Lion Festival, Star Watch, Magma, and many more. Come on. Yes! Nice. Play top social casino games at My Konami Slots. Play free games, earn points, level up, get rewards, food and drinks, rides and attractions, cruise vacations, and more. 1, 2, 3, spin. Woo! This free social casino game is constantly getting new slot machines, which means that you can continually find new favorites. Play free now and get 2 million free chips welcome bonus and a 10 million special bonus exclusively from the link in the description or by scanning the QR code. This oil line is not coming off and I'm worried about shaking the engine around. It's like very, very sketchy on the stand. There we go. I'm trying to figure out how this comes apart. We've got the water pump, but also drives the oil pump. Since there's a snap ring here, I'm thinking maybe I need to put the snap ring off and slide this back and it'll pop out. And there's this other connection here, basically the oil outlet. I think I might need to, I had a bracket on it, I took that off. I need to slide this down and that will let me take the oil pump off, but that's just a guess. I don't really know how this comes apart, so try to not mess it up, but get it off quickly. Oil pump is fighting me a bit. I mean, so far, it's been a bit of a struggle. Like every piece of hardware is a different size. They're using 5mm, 6mm, 12mm bolts in between. It's just a lot of stuff going on here. It's kind of a weird design. I'm trying to get this thing apart as quickly as possible, but also not damage anything in the process. Because like I said, it's really hard to get parts for this thing. Well, I think I'm just gonna leave this thing for now because it doesn't seem like it wants to come out. It's got a long shaft that's driven off of here that drives the oil pump, and we got it slid back a bunch, but it's still engaged. Oil filter housing in the way, so I can't slide it back anymore. Maybe when I pull the oil pan on, it'll all come out together, and maybe that's the way it's supposed to go. I'm gonna move on to something else. Valve covers should be ready to come off. They're a little bit sticky, so I'm gonna pop up the corner here. I'm gonna be careful to do it in a spot where I'm not gonna damage the seal or the surface. What it looks like in here. Basic. Cams look to be in pretty good shape. So everything here so far looks really good. There's really no wear on the cams. Basically these buckets below them are the lifters. So I'm really happy that I don't see any damage here on the cams or anywhere else in the top section of the head. We still have to pull the heads off. We have a lot more parts to inspect, but so far so good. Like I said, parts are very hard to find for these things and very expensive. So the more that we can reuse from this engine, the better. I've got to try to figure out where top dead center is on this engine, which means the number one piston is all the way at the top of the bore, so as high as it can possibly go, and all of the valves on that cylinder are closed. I don't know where the timing marks are on this engine. I need to get that piston up to top dead center and then see if I can find any marks on the cams that say, okay, this is up for the intake cam on this bank, this is up for the exhaust cam on this bank. Sometimes there's marks on the chains, marks on the cams, super easy to put together. Sometimes there's nothing and you need special tools to do it. It is a Ferrari, so I know it won't be easy.
I was on Google looking for the firing order for the F12 engine. Here's a V12 chart for Ferrari V12s, but what's new and what's old? An F12 old? Or old as in 550 old? Mike?
New Ferrari. Well, the good thing is that the cylinders are numbered the same. That's all that really matters right now. So front of engine, it says this is number one, which I would not have guessed because this cylinder is further back. So this is the very front cylinder.
It does say front of engine, so
yeah,
it has to be right.
I don't know if it has to be right, but I hope it's right.
Is this officially from Ferrari or is this just from some guy?
This is from a forum.
All right,
It's from Ferrari Life forum.
Well, I'm looking here at Wikipedia, and it says the F140 engine, which is this model of engine that also comes in the 599 and the FF. It says 65 degree. So that's cool. Okay, V12 cylinder numbering and firing orders. Ferrari numbers their engine in a U shape, starting with number one being the farthest forward cylinder. So that would be this one. But in the picture, it was showing this one. When you are at the rear of the motor, facing the flywheel, the cylinders are 1 through 6 on the right.
What?
Wait. Okay, so this says this is 1 through 6. which that other picture said, right? But
Yes.
this is not the farthest forward cylinder.
Maybe as far as forward from the back.
But that's the farthest.
Wait, what?
New Ferrari, 550, 575, 456. Those are new Ferraris, Mark. Something's wrong here.
Getting the firing order and the cylinder correct is crucial. If we don't know which cylinder number 1 is, and we don't time the engine correctly when we put it back together, that means valve to piston contact, which means we will absolutely destroy this motor. Okay, here I see some dots. So there are some dots there that are gonna line up. So go a little bit more, almost. Yes. This one is about to open the intake valve. So I think this is number 1.
I mean, it is the farthest forward.
That would make sense. That piston is all the way up. And the head is also marked here. It's got, these numbers start over here.
Yeah, what's the last number on that?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the cam caps. And then that side.
13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
Yeah, and it goes up to 20, 21. So it would make sense that this lower numbered head is number 1. I don't know why it shows number 1 being over there on the Ferrari forums. Guys, what's up? Putting out bad information on the Ferrari life?
Everyone else blows up their car. It makes yours more rare.
That's right. Now I'm gonna pull the front cover off. I just pulled the timing chain tensioners off of there. They're out of the way, but I need to get this off so I can pull this whole front cover off and basically expose the timing chains. Then I can remove the timing chains. Then I can remove the cams. Then I'll be able to remove the head. That guy did not want to come off. Well, we can't use a breaker bar because we don't have anything to lock the engine down.
No.
We don't have a flywheel, so we can't hold the engine in place. We don't have an air impact gun, so we can't use that. We need more tools. Anybody want to sponsor us? Tool shops, guys? Let us know. Well, I think the only option we have at this point is to try to torch it, heat it up a little bit. That sometimes will loosen it up and allow us to get it off, but I think our impact gun is just not strong enough, and we don't have an air impact gun. We don't have anything stronger. So, Tim, grab the torch, please. It's starting to round the edges off. No, not coming off of this thing. This sucks. I really needed to get this engine apart today to figure out what was going on with it, what parts we need, what other damage are we going to find inside of this engine. Without a bigger impact gun, we are not going to be able to do that. If I can't get that bolt off to get the pulley off, I can't take the front cover off, which means I can't get to these cam bolts, which means I can't take the cams out, I can't take the head off, I can't get the oil pan off, so we are absolutely stuck where we're at right now. It's too late for me to go and buy one. Basically all the stores are closed that would have a high quality, strong air impact gun, so we'll just have to get it tomorrow, and it's just gonna be pushed back another day. We've only got 82 days left to get this thing all built, completely done and together. Issues like this are not what we need. All right, so I went by my shop and I grabbed a proper impact gun, and I also got a nitrogen bottle regulator and a hose. Our compressor only goes to about 150 pounds of pressure. That takes off most stubborn bolts, but this thing felt really stuck on there, so we're gonna need some more torque, some more power to remove that. And with the nitrogen bottle, I can crank up the pressure to 300 pounds if I need to.
Oh, yeah.
So it should come off no problem, I hope, because we really need to get this thing apart. We've got 81 days left. Time is ticking. We need to get this apart as quickly as possible. I'm just going to 300 to
Oh
start.
my goodness.
Let's just get this thing apart. There we go. I got that off. And lots of Loctite. So that's basically why I was trying to heat the bolt up. Heating it up will loosen the Loctite up and it will come out. But yeah, couldn't get it hot enough. Now we got the bolt out, but this pulley looks like it's pressed on.
Oh yeah, she's stuck.
And I don't have a puller here. This feels like aluminum, fairly thin, so I can't just put a pry bar on it. I'd probably wreck it. But since it's aluminum, maybe I can heat this up The aluminum is gonna expand faster than the steel crankshaft will, and it might loosen it up enough to get it off. So that's what we gotta try to do. Whew, melting. All right, that worked. Actually get this front cover off now. Now we've got the front cover off and we can see how the timing chains are run. So there's basically an idler pulley in the middle that both the cams are driven off of. And then we've got the other drive that goes over here that's driving the water pump and the oil pump. So that was the issue we had yesterday, was trying to get that oil pump off. Should be easier now, possibly, or it might still come off with the oil pan. Once we loosen up these tensioners, we'll be able to get the chain off, maybe have to take this gear off of here, but that's not a big deal. And I'm just gonna look and see if I can find any other marks for the timing chain system. So we got the cams put at basically their top point, top dead center. Check to see if I can find a mark on the crankshaft. So this doesn't really matter, it can be turned anyway, but the connection between this and the crankshaft basically faces the cams, so that's gotta be spot on. I'm looking at all the timing chain stuff and I look down and basically this is the oil pan, but look at this gray. That is a mixture of oil and maybe some metal, something else. It almost looks like engine assembly lube. So if we put an engine together and use like a moly paste on all the bearings, put everything together, usually in the first oil change, or if we pull the oil pan after that, we'll see this. But this engine has a lot of miles on it, and that should have been completely washed out with all the oil changes. So it's probably some metal wear. Looks very abnormal. We'll have to dig in more and see what else we find. Things were going well this morning. I got the impact gun from my shop. We got that nut off of the pulley. We got the pulley off by heating it up. We got the front cover off. We're checking the timing. We found that oil, that weird, almost metallic looking stuff in the oil, but we're running into more issues. There are more special tools that we don't have here. It is a very thin wall, 10mm socket is what it looks like, that goes inside to grab a nut, and that's basically not allowing us to pull off the timing chain tensioner. So we're gonna have to modify a socket and try to get it to fit in there, and hopefully we can get this thing apart as quickly as possible. Won't fit in there. So that's a super thin wall socket. We're gonna have to modify this socket. So I got a little makeshift lathe over here. Right now we're about 14.5mm on the outside. We need to be 13.2mm to get it to fit into that spot. Still got quite a bit more to go. All right, it's on there. Oh, is it actually coming? It worked. I think it's working. Absolutely destroyed the socket, but it's okay. Alright, so I was hoping to be able to get the cams off, so I need to take the chain off without taking these off. But this is one piece and it won't come off because of the timing chain guides and this the chain and everything. So I'm gonna have to pull these off. They should just impact off. This should be a normal thread. They shouldn't be reversed, so hopefully it'll work out. These look a lot like BMW parts. Germany. So the Vanos system in the BMW, which is basically controlling the camshafts, looks super similar to this, and these are made in Germany, and so are the BMW parts, so probably the exact same design, slightly modified for Ferrari's needs, I'm sure. Oh, this one has a little shim. Did that one have a shim on it also?
It doesn't look like it.
Oh, maybe it does have a shim. I'm just gonna come off. Yeah.
Oh.
Whew. It's like a paper thin washer. I don't want to damage it, but that's it's an important part there, I'm sure. I wonder if it adds friction. So these are a friction seal. They don't have a groove, they don't have a dowel pin or a key or anything. They get timed and tightened down, and it's just basically the pressure of the bolt holding it on there that keeps it locked into the cam. So that could just be something that adds a little bit of friction, maybe a little bit of squish to get it tightened down. timing chains are off. At this point, we can take the cams out. We can pull the heads off, and we can leave this bit for later. Once we pull the oil pan off, that might make it a lot easier to get this chain off. That was actually fairly easy. Got that out of the way. I'll pull these off.
Oh, there's part of a bearing also.
Yeah, it's got multiple bearings in here. All right, so the cams are almost ready to come out, but you have to be really careful when taking your cams out because we don't have a factory tool, which I'm guessing there's a factory tool. A lot of times there's a bar that goes across and holds the cams down. All of those springs are pushing up on the lobes that are pointing down, so there's a lot of tension. And if you start pulling caps off from one end, you can damage the head, you can damage the caps, basically the bearing surfaces where the camshaft rides, or you could even crack the camshaft. Some camshafts are cast and they'll just snap. These don't look like that would happen to them, but we could damage the caps and the head, so we got to be real careful. Basically loosen all these bolts up slowly back and forth and let the cam come up nice and even. So we've got a roller lifter here basically that drives off of this lobe on the camshaft, so it's like a triangle here, and that drives the high pressure fuel pump. So as the cam is turning, this is moving up and basically pumping on that high pressure fuel pump and increasing the pressure super high. So it's a simple concept that works really well to get 3,000 PSI or something of fuel pressure. Cam number 1 is out. This is a really nice piece. It looks like it is a machined tube, and then they slide and basically press the cam lobes on into the right positions. Not sure if it's actually like a friction welded thing or if it's just pushed on into place. So we got all the cam caps off. The cams are out. We were able to loosen all of the bolts holding the head down onto the studs. Those all came out no problem, and we are ready to remove the head. Ready? Yep. It's gonna be pretty tight on the studs. I think you're a little, put your side down a little bit. Okay. Now come up. It's tight. Yeah, let's flip it upside down. All right, so just looking to see if there is any damage that's visual in here. I mean, there's a lot of lead buildup, which that's pretty normal, running leaded fuel. I don't see any marks, I don't see any gouges in this head, so that's all really good. So far this looks very normal. I don't see any issues here, so that's good. Let's look at the block.
The cylinder's a little bit darker than the rest, but no big deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, so that's why I want to look at the cylinders, because this could just be burning more oil in that cylinder, but it could also be because the exhaust was so unequal length.
Oh yeah.
There's more back pressure in some cylinders, more like exhaust feeding back in.
That makes sense.
Yeah, there's some weird marks on top of that piston, but maybe some detonation, possibly. There's definitely some wear in the cylinders. I don't see anything that's like terrible so far. And you can see the pistons are rocking around a lot. The mark here is smooth, and then up here it gets raised up. So the pistons are basically rocking in the bore. All right, let's pull the head gasket off. It is cast or some sort of iron cylinder liners. That is very good news, because that means that we can machine this. Hopefully they're thick enough to just take off a little bit of material and get the cylinders round again. A lot of times the cylinders will start to warp and turn oval and it won't seal up. Also, the surface, when we put new parts in here, it's gonna have to be scuffed up properly by a machine shop so that the rings will wear in properly. But overall, everything looks okay here. We still have a lot of parts to remove though. So let's pull the other head off. So it looks a little bit weird over here. I think we might have some problem with this valve sealing. It looks a bit odd, and it looks different than all the other cylinders. we do have some scoring in this cylinder. Probably from that debris that we found inside of the intake manifold, just the little pieces of metal that were falling in over time and getting in between the piston and the cylinder and just scratching everything. So I'm sure when we pull the pistons out, we'll find more scratches on the skirts and the side, possibly some damaged rings as well. There is some wear, there's some scoring on the cylinders. I'm sure we'll find more damage on the sides of the pistons. Overall, not terrible. We're definitely gonna need new pistons, 100%. We're not gonna run these again. Let's flip it over, let's pull the oil pan off and see what else we find. Yep, there we go. We're getting a stud. Yes, you gotta take that pole out.
Yeah.
And you got to hang on to the engine while we turn it. So basically the stud is hitting, so we'll have to slide it out and hopefully this thing won't fall off the engine stand.
Okay, I think that's enough.
Is that enough?
That looks like enough.
All right, so hang on to it because it's gonna wanna just like flip upside down.
Yep.
All right, I think we got all of the bolts off of the oil pan and should be ready to take this thing off. I'm gonna hit it with a mallet a bit because it's glued on. All right, we're finally gonna pull the oil pan off and see what's going on inside of the engine. This is something I've been waiting for quite a while since we found those metal shavings in the oil. And well, let's get it open, Tim. Let's see what's going on here. Little stud. Yeah, these studs are tight. All right, let's flip it over quickly because I think there's bearing shells in here. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's not looking good.
Oh,
Look at that wear.
and it's kind of all of them.
Yeah, more so in the back than in the front. But those are the main bearings. So that's the bearings that the crankshaft is riding in. Usually, if the main bearings look damaged, the rod bearings look worse. The mains, the crank just spins around in circles. Where the rod bearings are getting articulated, there's a lot more load. The bearings are smaller. Let's see what we're gonna find in here. I don't see any rods that are discolored. Basically different colors starting to turn blue or gray, dark gray. Basically means they're getting really hot. I don't see that, but we could still have some spun bearings. We will start pulling off the rod caps and pop each piston out of the cylinder, and then we'll inspect everything. Now I'll pull the bolts out, but before I pull them out completely, I'll pull them out a little bit, tap on them with a hammer, and that's going to release the cap from the rod. So there's some dowels that are holding it all together. They fit really tight, so giving it that little tap will help open it up, and it'll also make sure there's enough threads on those bolts so I don't strip or damage it. Yep. That's what I figured. Those bearings are not looking great. Now let's get the rest of them out and check them out.
Yep. Got it. Well, pretty short.
Yeah. Very short rods, fairly short skirts as well. It looks like it was mostly just wearing the top of the piston as it was rocking. And I mean, there's some material missing from the coating that's on the skirts. So it was putting some pressure on there, but not terrible, but the bearings don't look good. So it's a good thing that we are pulling this thing apart for a rebuild, because I don't know how much longer these would have lasted before they spun. When you spin a bearing, you get all this material and you see these gouges in here. Those are low spots. So something went through there and scraped it. But when you have that low spot, it creates a low spot here, but it pushes up on the outside and creates a high spot. Now there's not proper oil clearance, and that will start to spin a bearing. Basically, the oil won't be flowing. There won't be a layer of oil in between the crank and the bearing. So you'll get metal to metal contact. And once a bearing starts to spin, it goes really quick. This bearing came out of the rod easily. It fell out, and that usually means that the bearing is starting to shrink up from this wear in here and getting hot, and it'll start to basically tighten around the crankshaft and loosen around the rod. So that's a sign that these are going out, they're on their way out, and it wouldn't have lasted much longer. Yep. Similar damage on that one. So those little spots, if you can see those, that's debris that have gotten basically pushed into the bearing. So there's multiple layers on the bearing. It's a steel shell, and then I believe it's like a copper, and then the bearing material, which is like I think it's called a babbitt, which is a softer material, and those little specks of dirt in there have gotten embedded and created high spots. Finally got all the pistons out. Looking at the bearings, there were a few of them that did not look great. I don't know how much longer the engine would have lasted. It was definitely going to blow up at some point in the near future. And if that bearing went and the car kept being driven, basically if you don't hear that knocking noise and you keep driving it, there's a very good chance that the rod will break or the bolts will snap, which sends the piston flying towards the head, and then the rod will actually get shot sideways out of the side of the block, making everything unusable. I'm glad that we got this thing apart finally and we start moving forward. Sourcing pistons and rods, custom parts are gonna take some time. We also need some factory parts. We need a bunch of gaskets, we need the bearings. We have it apart now. We can start moving forward, finding these parts, finding the solutions.
It sounds expensive.
Oh, it's expensive, and it's a long process that absolutely has to be done correctly for this thing to run the way we want it to run and make the power that we want it to make.
I might be looking at selling another car maybe.
You know, to get this whole car done, it's going to take a lot of money for sure. This thing is.
Or Dave and I are going to have to go start standing on the street corner or start an OnlyFans or something.
You know, whatever you guys got to do to make it work.
Well, you know what? There's always an upside, and that's what I want to look towards. You know, the silver lining is we can build the perfect engine for this build now instead of just cutting some corners, keeping it the way it was. Now we can truly build it the way we want it to be built.
Yep.
So the motor's the F12's done.
Hey.
It's done. It's not blown up. It's salvageable, some of the stuff we need, the block and stuff, but it's done. It's going to cost a bunch of money that we have to find. So yeah. How much time was added to our ETA? A lot.
Hi guys. All right, well that actually went better than I expected. You know.
Yeah.
I was expecting like, what? It's gonna cost how much? But I think, you know, they're being realistic. We've had these talks already on how much things are gonna cost. I don't know, honestly. The rods are gonna be the biggest issue because if they don't have a casting that's very, very close to the right length and the right width, they have to make a new casting to build these rods, which just adds tons of time and tons of expense to basically create new tooling, to create new rods that they have never done before. That's where it gets really expensive. The pistons, you can usually find a blank, and that's just a poured, molded, forged piston, and then they machine it down to the correct specs. But the rods are gonna be the real issue, and that's gonna add quite a bit of time and cost to this.